The autumn sun hung low in the sky, painting the city streets in shades of gold and amber. Park Sung-ho moved slowly down the cracked sidewalk, his weathered boots making soft scraping sounds with each careful step. At 90 years old, every movement required thought and planning. His gnarled fingers wrapped tightly round a woodbine cane that had seen better days, its surface worn smooth by decades of use. The military jacket he wore told a story of its own. Faded olive green fabric hung loose on his shrinking frame, but the ribbons and medals pinned to his chest still caught the light. Purple Heart, Bronze Star, Silver Star, and they're partially hidden beneath his collar. The distinctive blue ribbon with white stars that marked him as one of America's greatest heroes, a Medal of Honor, or recipient. But to the three young men lounging outside Kim's corner store, he was just another old man taking up space on their block. Kim Time-in leaned against the brick wall, his expensive sneakers crossed at the ankles. At 24, he thought he owned the world. His black hair was perfectly styled, and his designer jacket probably cost more than Park's monthly pension. He nudged his friend Lee Dongwoo, pointing at the approaching veteran. "Check this out, Time-in," said with a smirk. "Here comes the neighborhood fossil." Dongwoo straightened up, his phone already in his hand. He was always looking for content for his social media accounts, always hungry for likes and shares. This could be good for views, he whispered. The third member of their group, Choi Min-ho, was the youngest at 22. He had grown up hearing stories about the Korean War from his grandfather, but those seemed like ancient history to him now. All he saw was an old man moving too slowly, taking up too much space on their sidewalk. Park continued his methodical approach to the store, each step bringing him closer to his destination, his wife. Mi-young was at home waiting for her heart medication. The prescription was expensive, but he would walk miles if necessary to make sure she had what she needed. They had been married for 67 years, and he wasn't about to let something as simple as medicine come between them now. "Excuse me," Park said politely as he reached the group. His voice carried the weight of years but remained steady and clear. "I need to get to the store." Time-in pushed off from the wall, deliberately stepping into Park's path. "What's the rush, old man? You got somewhere important to be." Park's eyes, though clouded with age, still held the sharp intelligence that had kept him alive through some of the bloodiest battles of the Korean War. He recognized the tone, the posture, the challenge in the young man's voice. He had faced worse than this. "Please," Park said, his voice remaining calm. "I just need to buy medicine from my wife." "Your wife?" Dongwoo laughed, holding up his phone to start recording. "What woman would want to be stuck with a relic like you?" The words hit Park like physical blows, but he had learned long ago not to react to insults. He tried to step round them, but Time-in moved to block him again. "Look at this uniform," Time-in said, reaching out to touch one of Park's ribbons. "You think wearing this old costume makes you special? This is 2025. Grandpa, nobody cares about your ancient wars." Park's jaw tightened slightly. The jacket wasn't a costume. It was earned with blood and sacrifice on frozen hills half a world away. But he kept his response measured. "I served my country. I earned the right to walk these streets in peace. Served your country." Min-ho joined in, emboldened by his friend's laughter. "You probably just sat in some office pushing papers while real soldiers did the fighting." The comment revealed just how little they knew about the man they were harassing. Park Sung-ho had spent 72 hours straight in a foxhole on Hill 235, fighting off wave after wave of Chinese attackers while his unit evacuated wounded soldiers. He had crawled through enemy fire to drag 3 wounded Marines to safety. He had held his position even when shrapnel tore through his shoulder and blood filled his boots. "I don't want any trouble," Park said, trying once more to move past them, too. "But," Timon said, grabbing Park's arm, "we're not done talking to you." The grip was tight, painful against Park's thin arm. For a moment, muscle memory kicked in. His free hand started to move in a defensive pattern he had learned 7 decades ago. But he stopped himself. These were just foolish young men, not enemy soldiers. "Please let me go," Park said quietly. "Or what?" Timon laughed. "You'll call the police. You'll fight us. Look at you. You can barely stand up." Dongwu circled round to get a better angle with his phone. "This is going to get so many views," he said excitedly. "Old man gets owned by kids half his age." "You didn't fight for anything," Timon spat, his face inches from Park's. "You're just taking up space, breathing air that younger people need. Why don't you do everyone a favor and just disappear?" The words hung in the air like poison. Park felt something break inside him. Not his spirit, but his hope that the world he had fought to protect still existed. "I fought for you," Park said, his voice barely above a whisper. "I fought so you would have the freedom to stand here and say these things to me. Nobody asked you to fight for me," Timon snarled. With a violent shove, he pushed Park backward. The elderly veteran stumbled, his cane flying from his grip as he lost his balance. Time seemed to slow as he fell backward toward the busy street. Park hit the asphalt hard, his head cracking against the pavement. Car horns blared as drivers slammed on their brakes. A taxi missed him by inches, its tires screaming against the road. The 3 young men erupted in laughter, Dongwu making sure to capture every second on his phone. They were too busy celebrating their cruelty to notice the small device sewn into Park's jacket, a veteran's emergency beacon that had automatically activated the moment he hit the ground. Park lay motionless for a moment, stunned by the impact. Blood trickled from a cut on his forehead, and his left shoulder throbbed with familiar pain. But even through the haze of injury, he could hear them laughing at him, marking his fall. 20 miles away, at the naval base, an alert was already flashing on a computer screen. The beacon's unique signature was being traced, prioritized, and forwarded to the people who would care most about Park Sun-ho safety. The 3 bullies had no idea that they had just made the biggest mistake of their lives. The secure communications center at Naval Base Coronado hummed with the quiet efficiency of a well-oiled machine. Banks of monitors displayed real-time data from across the globe, while technicians in headsets coordinated operations that spanned continents. But at 3:47 p.m. on this ordinary Tuesday, everything changed. Petty Officer 3rd Class Song Minwoo was monitoring routine traffic when his screen suddenly flashed red. An urgent tone pierced the air. Not the standard emergency alert, but something different. Something that made his blood freeze. "Holy," Minwoo whispered, his fingers flying across the keyboard. The beacon signature was unlike anything he had seen in 3 years of service. This wasn't a lost hiker or a stranded motorist. This was a code black, a Medal of Honor recipient in immediate danger. "Sir," Minwoo called across the room, "we have a priority alert. Medal of Honor recipient, age 90. Emergency beacon activated downtown San Diego." Lieutenant Commander Han Jae-wook dropped his coffee cup, not caring as the hot liquid splashed across his training schedules at 38. He had served in 3 combat tours and earned more decorations than most soldiers see in a lifetime. But right now, none of that mattered. His grandfather had told him stories about the Korean War, about the heroes who held the line when everything seemed lost. Beacon ID Jae-wook demanded, already moving toward the communications station. Bravo-7-7-Alpha. Minwoo replied, his voice tight with recognition. Sir, that's Park Sung-ho. The Park Sung-ho. Jae-wook's blood turned to ice. Every military academy in America taught about Hill 235. Every Marine knew the story of the lone soldier who held off an entire Chinese battalion for 6 hours while his unit evacuated their wounded. Park Sung-ho wasn't just a Medal of Honor recipient. He was a living legend. Get me Team Alpha. Jae-wook barked into his radio. Code Black activation. This is not a drill. I repeat, this is not a drill. Throughout the base, alarms began to sound. Not the general alarm that meant incoming attack, but a specific tone that every SEAL knew by heart. Someone was in trouble. Someone important. In the Team Alpha ready room, 12 Navy SEALs were cleaning weapons and reviewing tactical plans when the alert came through. Staff Sergeant Kim Soo-jin, the team leader, was the first to react. At 31, she had served in more classified operations than she could legally discuss, but she had never heard a code black for a Medal of Honor recipient. Gear up. Now, she shouted, her voice cutting through the sudden chaos. Full tactical load. We have a hero down. The transformation was incredible to watch. Within 90 seconds, 12 elite warriors had gone from casual conversation to full combat readiness, Kevlar vests, tactical helmets, M4 carbines, and enough ammunition to fight a small war. But more than their equipment, it was their attitude that had changed. This wasn't just another mission. This was personal. Petty Officer Lee Han-woo grabbed the communications gear, his fingers already working to establish secure channels. Yes, sir. I'm patching intercity traffic cameras and GPS tracking. We'll have eyes on the scene in 2 minutes. Good, Soo-jin replied, checking her weapon one final time. What do we know about the situation? Jae-wook's voice crackled through their earpieces. Beacon activated from minutes ago. Signal is stationary, which means either our guy is down, or he's being held against his will. Either way, we're going in hot. The team moved like a machine toward the motor pool, where 4 black SUVs waited with engines already running. These weren't ordinary vehicles. They were armored, equipped with communication rays, and capable of speeds that would make most sports cars jealous. As they loaded into the vehicles, Corpsman Oh-ji-hoon double-checked his medical kit. At 29, he had saved more lives than most doctors, but the thought of treating a 90-year-old Medal of Honor recipient under combat conditions made his hands shake slightly. Sir, he said to Jae-wook, if this guy is as old as the report says, we need to be prepared for serious injuries. A fall at that age could be fatal. Then we make sure he doesn't fall again. Jae-wook replied grimly. The convoy screamed out of the base, their emergency lights cutting through traffic like a hot knife through butter. Cars pulled over instinctively, their drivers sensing that something important was happening. The lead SUV's GPS showed their destination, a corner store in a neighborhood that had seen better days. Command. This is Alpha Leader, Soo-jin reported. Through her radio, we're rolling hot. ETA to target location is 3 minutes. In the communications center, Minwoo was coordinating with local authorities, sir. San Diego PD is requesting our status. They want to know if they should respond. Jae-wook's response was immediate and final. Negative. We handle this ourselves. That man earned his protection the hard way. The convoy raced through the streets, their sirens wailing a song of justice. Inside the lead vehicle, Soo-jin was studying satellite imagery of the target location on her tablet. The corner store was on a busy street with multiple escape routes. If this was a hostage situation, they would need to move fast and smart. Han-woo, I want eyes on the scene before we arrive, she ordered, Hack into every camera within a 6-block radius. I want to know exactly what we're walking into. Already on it, he replied, his fingers flying across his keyboard. I'm seeing. Wait a minute, sir. I'm picking up multiple cell phone signals at the target location. Someone's streaming live video. Jae-wook's jaw tightened. Patch it through. To my screen. The image that appeared on his monitor made his blood boil. 3 young men were standing over an elderly figure on the ground, laughing and pointing their phones at him. The old man was trying to get up, but he was clearly injured and struggling. Those punks have no idea what they've just done. Jae-wook growled. Alpha Team, you are authorized to use whatever force necessary to secure the scene. That man is a national treasure, and he's under our protection now. Copy that, sir, Soo-jin replied. 2 minutes out, the beacon signal remained steady. The electronic cry for help that had awakened the most dangerous warriors in the American military. Park Sang-ho had spent his life protecting others, often at great personal cost. Now it was their turn to protect him. As the convoy rounded the final corner, Soo-jin could see the scene ahead. The 3 young men were still there, still filming, still laughing. They had no idea that justice was about to arrive in the form of 12 very angry Navy SEALs. This is Alpha Leader. She announced over the radio, we have visual contact. Beginning final approach. The moment of reckoning had arrived. The 3 bullies stood over Park Sang-ho like vultures circling wounded prey. The elderly veteran had managed to drag himself from the street back onto the sidewalk, but every movement sent waves of pain through his 90-year-old body. His left shoulder felt like it was on fire, and warm blood trickled down his forehead, from where his head had struck the pavement. Look at him crawling round like a bug. Timon laughed, holding his phone higher to get a better angle. This is comedy gold right here. Park pressed his back against the brick wall of the store, using it to support himself as he tried to stand. His legs shook with the effort, and he could taste blood in his mouth. But his eyes, those eyes that had seen the worst of war and the best of humanity, remained steady and unbroken. Please, Park whispered, his voice barely audible above the traffic noise. I just want to go home to my wife. Dong-woo zoomed in with his camera, capturing every detail of the old man's pain. Your wife? She's probably already planning your funeral, old man. You look like you're about to drop dead any second. Min-ho kicked Park's fallen cane away, sending it skittering across the sidewalk. Maybe we should help speed things up, he said with a cruel grin. Put you out of your misery. Park's military training told him to assess the situation. Look for escape routes. Prepare for the worst. But his body wouldn't obey. 7 decades of age weighed him down like chains. All he could do was sit there and endure their cruelty. My wife is waiting for our medicine, Park said, his voice growing weaker. She needs her heart medication. Please, just let me buy it and go. Maybe you should have thought of that before. Timon's words were cut short by a sound that made his blood freeze. The screech of tires filled the air. But not the panicked braking of civilian cars. This was different. This was coordinated, professional. Dangerous. For black SUVs materialized round the scene like ghosts, their movements so perfectly synchronized that they seemed to be controlled by a single mind. They boxed in the area with military precision, cutting off every escape route. The vehicles were unmarked, but obviously government, too clean, too armored, too intimidating to be anything civilian. For a moment, everything was silent except for the quiet rumble of powerful engines. Then the doors exploded open. 12 figures emerged in perfect unison, moving with a fluid grace that spoke of countless hours of training and real combat experience. They were dressed in full tactical gear, black Kevlar vests, tactical helmets with night vision mounts, and weapons that looked like they could level a building. The three bullies froze like deer in headlights. Timon's phone slipped from his suddenly nerveless fingers, clattering to the pavement. Dongwu's mouth fell open as he found himself staring down the barrel of an M4 carbine held by a warrior whose eyes promised violence on the ground. Now, Staff Sergeant Kim Soo-jin's voice cut through the afternoon air like a blade. It wasn't a request or a suggestion. It was a command backed by the full authority of the United States military. The transformation was instant and complete. 3 seconds earlier, Kim Timon had been the king of his small corner of the world, bullying an old man for social media likes. Now, he was face down on dirty concrete, his cheek pressed against the pavement, surrounded by the most elite warriors in the American military. Hands behind your heads. Do not move. Another SEAL commanded, his weapon trained on Minho. Any sudden movements and you will be considered hostile. The crowd that had been walking past began to stop and stare. This was better than any movie. Real-life military action happening right in front of them. Cell phones appeared as people began recording, but the SEALs ignored them. They had bigger concerns. Lieutenant Commander Han Jae-wook moved through the tactical formation like a general surveying a battlefield. His eyes swept the scene, taking in every detail. The injured veteran, the 3 suspects now prone on the ground, the gathering crowd. This was his operation now, and he would make sure it ended properly. He approached Park Sun-ho, removing his tactical helmet as he knelt beside the injured veteran. Without the intimidating headgear, his face showed genuine concern and respect. This wasn't just another mission for him. This was personal. Sir, I'm Commander Jae-wook, United States Navy, he said, his voice gentle but strong. We're here to help you. Park looked up at him with tired but grateful eyes. Even through the pain and confusion, he recognized the bearing of a professional. Soldier, you didn't have to come all this way for an old soldier like me. Sir, with all due respect, you are not just any old soldier, Jae-wook replied, his voice filled with reverence. You're the hero of Hill 235. We would cross oceans for you. The words hit Park like a physical blow. It had been so long since anyone had recognized his service, so long since anyone had treated him with the respect he had earned with blood and sacrifice. Tears began to well up in his eyes. Corpsman, Jae-wook called out. Oh Ji-hoon appeared instantly, his medical kit already open. At 29, he had treated wounded warriors in Afghanistan, Iraq, and Somalia. But this was different. This was treating a living legend. A man whose actions had saved dozens of lives and inspired generations of soldiers. Sir, I'm going to check your injuries, Ji-hoon said gently, his hands already beginning their professional assessment. Can you tell me where it hurts? My shoulder, Park whispered, and my head. But I'm okay. I've been hurt worse. Ji-hoon's examination was thorough but careful. The cut on Park's forehead needed stitches, and his shoulder showed signs of serious strain. But nothing appeared to be broken. For a 90-year-old man who had been shoved into traffic, he was remarkably intact. Round them, the other SEALs maintained perfect security. They had formed a protective perimeter around their wounded veteran, their weapons ready, but not threatening to the growing crowd of onlookers. These were professionals who understood the difference between protecting someone and terrorizing civilians on the ground. The 3 bullies were learning what real fear felt like. Timon's designer clothes were getting dirty against the pavement, and his perfectly styled hair was disheveled. The confident young man who had attacked an elderly veteran was nowhere to be seen, replaced by a trembling boy who had just realized he had made the biggest mistake of his life. Sir, one of the SEALs reported to Jae-wook. Local police are requesting permission to approach. They want to take custody of the suspects. Jae-wook looked down at the three prone figures, his expression unreadable. Not yet. We handle this ourselves first. That man, he pointed to Park, earned the right to see justice done properly. The crowd continued to grow, and social media was already exploding with videos of the scene. But for the 12 Navy SEALs, none of that mattered. They had one job: protect the hero who had once protected others. Everything else was secondary. Park Sang-ho, the man who had stood alone against impossible odds on a frozen hill in Korea, was finally surrounded by the protection he had always deserved. The scene on the sidewalk had transformed into something extraordinary. What started as three bullies tormenting an elderly man had become a powerful display of military honor and justice. The crowd that had gathered was now nearly 50 people strong, all holding up phones to capture this moment that would soon spread across the internet like wildfire. Lieutenant Commander Jae-wook stood tall over the three prone figures, his presence commanding respect from everyone within 100 yards. His voice carried the weight of authority as he addressed not just the attackers, but the entire crowd that had gathered to witness this reckoning. "Do you know who you attacked?" he asked, his tone deadly serious. Every word was measured, deliberate, designed to cut through the noise and chaos of the moment. "This man is Park Sang-ho, recipient of the Medal of Honor." The crowd fell silent. Even the traffic seemed to quiet as his words echoed off the surrounding buildings. Medal of Honor recipients were rare. Fewer than 3,500 had ever received the nation's highest military decoration. Most people had never seen one in person. In 1951, during the Korean War, this man held an entire Chinese battalion at bay for 6 hours while his unit evacuated wounded soldiers. Jae-wook continued, his voice growing stronger with each word. He was outnumbered 50-1. He was wounded twice, but he never left his position. He saved 47 American lives that day. A murmur of amazement rippled through the crowd. People began to look at Park with new eyes, seeing not just a frail old man, but a hero whose courage had saved dozens of lives. Some of the older Korean Americans in the gathering recognized the significance immediately and bowed respectfully toward the injured veteran. Mrs. Kim, an elderly woman who had been shopping nearby, pushed through the crowd. She had heard her father tell stories about the Korean War, about the brave soldiers who had fought to keep her homeland free. With tears in her eyes, she approached Park and spoke to him in Korean, thanking him for his service. Tae-min, still face down on the pavement, tried to speak. His voice was muffled against the concrete, but his words carried clearly in the sudden silence. "We didn't know. You didn't know because you didn't care," Sergeant Yoon-hyun interrupted, her voice sharp as a blade. At 34, she had served 3 tours in Afghanistan and had no patience for excuses. "You saw an elderly man and decided he was weak. You thought he was an easy target. You couldn't have been more wrong." The crowd began to understand what they were witnessing. This wasn't just about 3 bullies getting arrested. This was about respect, honor, and the debt that every free person owed to those who had fought for their freedom. In the distance, police sirens wailed, growing closer by the second. The SEALs had coordinated with local law enforcement from the moment they received the emergency alert. San Diego Police Department was sending their best officers, but they understood that this was a military matter first and foremost. Park, now sitting up with medical attention from Corpsman Ji-hoon, looked at his attackers with sad eyes. The anger that might have been there was replaced by something deeper: disappointment, not just in these 3 young men, but in what his country had become. I fought alongside their grandfather's generation, Park said. His voice barely audible, but somehow carrying to every person in the crowd. We bled together, died together, Korean boys and American boys, side by side in the mud and snow. This isn't the Korea I helped defend. His words hit the three attackers like physical blows. Minho, the youngest of the group, began to cry. The weight of what he had done was finally sinking in. He had attacked a war hero, a man who had risked everything to protect the freedom that Minho took for granted every day. The power of social media was already at work. Videos of the SEALs' response were being shared thousands of times per minute. #Veteran Honor began trending nationally as people learned Park's story. Comments poured in from active duty military, veterans and civilians alike, all expressing their outrage at the attack and their admiration for the elderly hero. A news van screeched to a halt at the edge of the crowd, followed quickly by two more. Local news crews had monitored police scanners and social media, realizing that something big was happening. Reporters and cameramen pushed through the crowd, their professional instincts telling them this was the story of the day. The contrast was powerful and photogenic. The frail, injured veteran surrounded by America's elite warriors, age and youth, wisdom and strength, past and present, all bound together by the same code of honor that had guided soldiers for generations. Reporter Sarah Chen from Channel 8 News managed to get close enough to Park to ask him a question. "Sir, how does it feel to know that these Navy SEALs came to your rescue?" Park looked up at her with tired but grateful eyes. "It feels like America still remembers its promises to those who serve." The words were simple, but they carried the weight of decades. Every person in that crowd understood what he meant. This wasn't just about one old man being helped. It was about a nation honoring its commitments to those who had sacrificed ever. "A thing for freedom." Commander Jae-wook knelt beside Park, speaking quietly so only the veteran could hear. "Sir, we're going to make sure this never happens again. You have my word." Park nodded, reaching out with a shaking hand to grasp the younger man's arm. "Thank you, son. Your grandfather would be proud." The police arrived in force, 6 patrol cars and a command vehicle. But they understood their role here. This was about more than just 3 bullies getting arrested. This was about justice, respect, and the debt that every American owed to those who had served. As the handcuffs clicked round their wrists, the 3 attackers finally understood the magnitude of their mistake. They hadn't just attacked an old man. They had attacked a living piece of American history. A hero whose courage had saved lives and inspired generations. The reckoning was complete. But the story was just beginning. The paramedics had finished their initial assessment of Park's injuries, confirming what Corpsman Ji-hoon had already determined: bruises, cuts, and strain, but nothing life-threatening. As they prepared to transport him to the hospital for a more thorough examination, Park raised his hand to stop them. "Wait," he said, his voice still weak but determined. "I need to speak to those young men one more time." Commander Jae-wook looked concerned. "Sir, you don't owe them anything. They attacked you. That's exactly why I need to speak to them," Park replied, struggling to get to his feet. "This is my last chance to teach them something important." The SEALs exchanged glances, but moved to support their hero. Staff Sergeant Sujin and Petty Officer Hyun-woo each took one of Park's arms, helping him stand steady on his feet. Every step was clearly painful, but Park's determination was stronger than his physical discomfort. The 3 attackers were lined up against a police car, their hands cuffed behind their backs. Their earlier arrogance had completely evaporated, replaced by a mixture of fear, shame, dawning understanding of what they had done, the weight of dozens of eyes upon them. SEALs, Police officers, civilians, and news cameras was crushing. Park approached them slowly, each step deliberate and measured. The crowd fell silent, sensing that something important was about to happen. Even the news reporters stopped their chatter, understanding that this moment deserved respect. "You hurt me today," Park said quietly, his voice carrying clearly in the sudden silence. "But you hurt yourselves more. Hatred is a poison that destroys the vessel that contains it." Timon, who had been the leader of the attack, looked up with tears streaming down his face. The young man who had seemed so confident and cruel just an hour ago was now broken, finally understanding the magnitude of what he had done. "Sir, I'm sorry," Timon whispered, his voice cracking with emotion. "I'm so sorry. I didn't know who you were. I didn't know what you had done for our country." Park studied the young man's face, seeing genuine remorse there. "I forgive you," he said simply. "But forgiveness doesn't erase consequences. You must face them and become better men." Dongwoo, who had been recording the attack for social media, could barely look at Park. "We were just having fun," he said weakly. "We didn't mean to hurt you so badly." "That's the problem," Park replied. "You thought hurting someone could be fun. You thought an old man was easy prey. You forgot that every person has dignity, regardless of their age or appearance." Minho, the youngest of the three, was sobbing openly. "My grandfather fought in the Korean War too," he said between tears. "He would be so ashamed of me." "Then honor his memory by becoming the man he wanted you to be," Park said gently. "Learn from this mistake. Grow from it. Make sure it never happens again." The police officers moved forward, preparing to transport the three attackers to the station for booking. They would face charges of assault on an elderly person, disturbing the peace, and several other offenses. But more than the legal consequences, they would have to live with the knowledge of what they had done. As the patrol cars pulled away, the crowd watched in respectful silence. Many had tears in their eyes, moved by the elderly veteran's display of grace and forgiveness. This was the kind of moral courage that had defined the greatest generation, and it was on full display for everyone to see. Commander Jae-wook approached Park, his expression filled with admiration. "Sir, we'd like to escort you home. Your wife must be worried." Park smiled weakly, the first genuine smile he had shown all day. "She is," he said, "but she's used to me being late from missions." The SEALs formed an honor guard around their hero, creating a protective formation as they walked him slowly toward their vehicles. The crowd began to applaud, a sound that started small but grew until it filled the entire street. Many people were wiping away tears, moved by what they had witnessed. Children in the crowd tugged on their parents' sleeves, asking about the medals on the old man's jacket. Parents knelt down to explain, using simple words to describe concepts like honor, duty, and sacrifice. This was a teaching moment that would stay with these families for generations. As the convoy of black SUVs began to move through the city, something remarkable happened. Word of the incident had spread through social media and news reports with lightning speed. People on sidewalks stopped what they were doing and saluted as the vehicles passed. Veterans in the crowd stood at attention. Children waved small American flags that seemed to appear from nowhere. At a red light, an elderly Korean American woman approached the lead vehicle. Commander Jae-wook rolled down his window, and she handed him a small bouquet of flowers. "For the hero," she said in accented English. "Tell him we remember." The convoy continued through neighborhoods where Park had lived for decades, places where he had walked in anonymity for years. But now, people were lining the streets. Someone had spray-painted here on a wall. A group of Korean War veterans had gathered at a small park, holding a handmade sign that read "Welcome Home." Brother, Park's modest apartment building came. Interview, and there on the front steps sat his wife, Yumi Young. At 87, she was still beautiful, her silver hair carefully arranged and her clothes neat despite the stress of the day. She had been watching the news coverage, seeing her husband's story spread across the nation. As Park stepped out of the SUV, supported by the SEALs, Myung rose to meet him. They had been married for 67 years, and she had waited through his deployment to Korea, through his nightmares when he returned, through decades of quiet heroism that the world had forgotten. "Welcome home, warrior," she whispered as he embraced her. The SEALs saluted before departing, but their protection of Park was far from over. The veterans' emergency beacon would remain active, and America's finest would always be ready to answer his call. More than that, they had gained a new mission, ensuring that Park Sang-ho received the recognition and respect he had always deserved. That evening, as news of the incident spread nationwide, Park sat with his wife in their small living room, watching their old television as the story unfolded. Young Americans of all backgrounds, Korean, Black, white, Latino, and others, were posting messages of respect and gratitude on social media. The three bullies had unknowingly awakened something powerful, a nation's recognition of its forgotten heroes. The final news report of the day showed something that made Park's eyes well up with tears. In the halls of Congress, a representative was reading Park's Medal of Honor citation aloud, honoring not just his wartime service, but his lifetime of dignity in the face of adversity. "The President of the United States has asked that I read this citation," the representative said, "not just to honor Sergeant Park's service in Korea, but to remind us all that heroes walk among us every day, often unrecognized and unappreciated." As the news coverage continued, Park held his wife's hand and smiled. For the first time in decades, he felt truly seen, truly honored, truly home. The emergency beacon in his jacket remained silent, but its message had been heard loud and clear. America takes care of its heroes, no matter how long it takes. The end.